I'm Eva. I am the label manager at an organisation called Come Play With Me based in Leeds, and I'm going to try and sum up releasing on vinyl in a very quick 10-15 minutes. I'll try and keep it as short as possible so we have a bit of time at the end for some questions, but I'll be around for like a little bit of time afterwards as well, if anyone's got any after that. Cool, so before I start, I just wanted to give like an overview of who Come Play With Me is. We are a not-for-profit organisation based in Leeds. We have a record label, events, we run an annual conference, we have a magazine, we do inclusion workshops, we've got a whole spider web of different activity. But the main thing that I get to look after is releasing our artists and getting local artists onto vinyl. So I kind of wanted to start by giving like an overview of the manufacturing process and how that works. There's like lots of little steps involved, and I think it's helpful for anyone who's thinking about releasing on vinyl but doesn't quite know where to start to understand what it is exactly you need. So obviously when you've had your final mixes and you master, you need to make sure that you've got a specific vinyl master, which most mastering engineers will know how to do. It seems kind of obvious, but some artists we work with haven't heard about this before, so yeah, that's kind of the main thing. And with artwork and stuff, so when you go to a manufacturer, they will give you templates. So whether you're working for like a 7-inch vinyl release or 12-inch or 10-inch, you will get given like templates which you can send to a designer, whether that's your mate or someone that you're paying to do it, and they'll be able to kind of format it for that. I've put kind of a few examples of manufacturers that we've used previously. Press on Vinyl are a pressing plant based in Middlesbrough. They are great, really easy to work with, and have an incredible turnaround. Breed Media, based in Sheffield, who are part of the bigger Key Production group. And then for anyone who's thinking about like tapes and stuff like that, Chalkpit Cassette Club and Tape Line are also really great for stuff like that. We always say to artists that we're working with that it's a really, really good idea to have a look at records that you already own, just to get a really good idea of what it is that you want, especially because there's so many different ways that you can bring a vinyl together through like inserts and stuff like that. It's a really good idea to have something in mind that you're after. Most pressing plants and manufacturers will be able to accommodate for whatever it is that you're looking for, but having something in mind so that you don't get overwhelmed when they send over all of the potential options is always really helpful. I wanted to run through, like, off the back of the manufacturing stuff, kind of the terminology, because there's a lot of different words and it can get quite confusing at times because a lot of people have different names for different things. So test pressings are essentially like the test of the pressing, I guess, named very well. And you tend to get like 5 copies of these with your vinyl order, which you can have a listen to, and you can make sure that the sound quality is fine, nothing's gone wrong, it's kind of gone across and been cut properly and sounds like the masters that you've got. So you'll get given them before the final run and you sign them off, and then they start that final run of making that. Then you've got inserts. So I feel like I should have brought one to show, but these are essentially like the piece of card that you have within the outer sleeve. People often use these for like photos of them in the studio, like credits, information about the tracks, lyrics, anything. You can put anything on there. There's no rules or anything. And yeah, they're totally free reign. and you don't have to do them either. Totally optional. The inner sleeve is the bit that the record is in. There's, again, lots of different options for these. You can get things that are called disco sleeves, which are just plain black or white. You can have printed sleeves if you didn't want to do an insert, and you could put that information on the printed inner sleeve. So again, there's so many different options and variables that you can have, which is why it's such a good idea to have a rough idea of what you want before you go in and do that. Outer sleeve is just the bit that holds everything together. So you have the front, you can get gatefold sleeves, which are the ones that kind of fold like a book, but they tend to be a lot more expensive. And then labels are the bits, the stickers in the middle of the vinyl. These often just have like A/B, some kind of illustration on. And then a mock-up is what gets used for pre-orders and stuff like that, which is essentially just replicates how the final product will look. I wanted to touch base as well, just for any artists and small labels in the room, about a scheme that Press On does called Fair Sound. It's essentially a crowdfunder scheme, so you get in touch with them and you can kind of build a quote around what the vinyl is that you want, and instead of paying like $2,000 up front to get 300 copies of the vinyl, you open up a pre-order, you kind of push that on socials or to like your mates, whoever. As soon as you've reached the point that, so as soon as you've had the amount of copies pre-ordered that covers the cost of the vinyl, which tends to be around 70, 75, depending on what kind of vinyl option you've gone for, they will, at that point, start the pressing process. So it essentially means that there's no upfront cost. You can like alleviate having loads of dead stock. And what you can do is, when you've reached that press-on point, is by gauging how many pre-orders you've had, depending on how long it's been open for, you can kind of gauge how much you want the final run to be, whether that's 200, 300, 500 copies. So it's a really good way as well to kind of, again, alleviate the issue of having just loads of vinyl sat in your living room, not really shifting. But yeah, and that's done at Press On, the one based in Middlesbrough. We at Come Play With Me talk a lot around sustainability of vinyl. It's a big issue, and we really try to do our part, but there's a few different things that you can do to make vinyl more sustainable. One of them is pressing on 140 gram instead of 180. It's the tiniest bit thinner, but audio quality exactly the same. Like, you can't tell with a human ear the difference. But the carbon footprint compared to 180 is drastic. There are also different options. So there's recently been bioplastic vinyl, which is an alternative to PVC, again, with the same audio quality. This is something that Press On have been kind of experimenting and leading on, so they've pressed a few campaigns with that. And then EcoMix, which is something we regularly use at Come Play With Me for our compilation albums, is essentially where they will just take up any leftover PVC or whatever from other pressings, and they'll mix it all together, and that will be what your records are made out of. It's really cool. It means that every record is a different colour, so it's really unique, and it often tends to be cheaper than paying for an actual like colour for a vinyl. So it's a nice cheap alternative to have something fun. And then with like anything that's printed, we always try and use recycled paper, anything like that, but a lot of the pressing plants that we work with tend to be on the same page with us around this. Music Declares Emergency are an amazing charity, but they have on their website a list of actions that you can take as an artist, a label, whoever you are, and they have loads of great advice and links to people and different organisations and companies that can give better advice than I just did. Quick one about release timelines. So before Brexit and COVID, vinyl was a great turnaround, but that kind of messed it all up. But luckily, it's kind of got back to how it used to be. So pressing for vinyl has drastically improved over the last 6 months. It now takes around 3 to 4 months for final delivery, and that includes getting your test pressings, which is insane, and means that it's a lot more achievable for local artists to work with vinyl, because there's not waiting on your stock to come to return on the money that you've put in for it. I've briefly just put in, this is about vinyl, but cassettes and CDs are also something worthwhile thinking about if you're a local artist. You can get like 50 cassettes made from like chalk pit or tape line, and they'll be delivered to your house in 2 weeks from when you put the order in. It's a much cheaper alternative to vinyl, and is, yeah, definitely something to think about if you're wanting to do some kind of physical format as a local artist. You can sell them for cheaper, and people like to buy them as just like a novel, fun thing. Oh, that's the same. There we go. Budgeting. So again, this is where kind of fair sound comes in for vinyl, because there's a massive, massive upfront cost for local artists and even us as a label. It really kind of changes the narrative around having to have like £2,000 spare to put a vinyl order in. But costs can vary a lot. Again, goes back to the whole having an idea of what it is that you want, how much printing you're having done. Like if you're having a sleeve, an insert, and then an inner sleeve, that's obviously a lot more paper, so it costs a lot more than just having a printed sleeve. Yeah, so many variables, but again, going back to press on their website, they've got a vinyl configurator, so you can put in like all of the options, all of the colors, like how many you want, what kind of sleeves you want, and it will give you a price. So it's a really good ballpark figure, whether you use press on or not, to do the manufacturing. It's a really useful tool to kind of get a ballpark figure in your head of what it is going to cost for you. But yeah, that was really quick and really speedy, and I feel like I've forgotten something, but has anyone got any questions about vinyl, physical formats?
Hi, just wondering about 7-inch singles. Like, is that still a process that is still available? That we can,
yeah,
because obviously, like, as a band, we might not have as many songs to do a full album with, but like, is something we'd be interested in, and you know, like having like a double-sided single kind of thing.
Yeah, so 7-inch vinyls people definitely still do. Breed Media, the manufacturer based in Sheffield, really good at that. Press On don't do 7 inches, unfortunately. But yeah, 7 inches are a great option. They are quite expensive. They're not more expensive than a 12-inch, but because you often charge a lot less for a 7. So I think off the top of my head, from when we last did some 500 7-inches, was around 1,100 quid, 1,200 quid. So you can, whereas like 300 12 inches would be around the same.
Can you still do the, was it the bio, like, vinyl thing? Where
Bioplastic, yeah.
You
can still do like bioplastic or eco mix. One thing as well around just 10 inches is they cost exactly the same as 12 inches because they just cut off the extra leftover wax. So 10 inches cost the same as 12 inches and 7 inches are cheaper, but aren't often very cost effective because you charge a lot less for them.
Thank you very much.
It's all right.
Probably got time for one more question. Yeah.
Maybe just for
let's say, like low-end emerging artists, you don't have loads of funds, what would you say to, or is the priority to focus on vinyl, CDs, or, you know, what would you give as guidance for initial pressing?
It kind of depends. I think if you're selling physical formats to raise funds, to go on tour, to do recording, then I'd go for like cassette or CDs because they're really quick turnaround. You can do runs of like 50 and then you can start selling them dead quick. I think vinyl is probably an option when as like a final thing. Like you've raised the funds, you've recorded an EP or an album or whatever, and then the vinyl is kind of a culmination of that project. I think because even though the turnarounds are quicker, it's still like 4 months. So there's still kind of a level of like, you have to be really kind of planning, like thinking of like a 12-month plan and having the vinyl slotting in, if that makes sense. But I think if you, yeah, it kind of depends what you want the physical format for, if that makes sense. Wicked. Thank you. I will be around afterwards if anyone else has any other questions, but thanks.